Planning a funeral is often a completely new experience for most people. Most people have never done it before. So the important thing to understand is that there's no right or wrong way to plan a funeral. When planning a funeral, just make sure you do what's right for you, your family, and what your loved one would have wanted. A funeral really is just an opportunity for the family and friends to say goodbye. And you don't have to have a traditional funeral service to say goodbye. You can plan the funeral in your own way. You can personalize it and do whatever works for you. But today we're going to talk about some things you should know about when planning a funeral in Australia. Who makes the decision about the funeral? If your loved one left a will, usually the executor will have the power to make the decisions about the funeral. But the executor should have regular consultation and discussion with the family to make sure that the funeral arrangements are done in accordance with the family's wishes. If there is no will, then the decision about the funeral is made by the senior next of kin. Now, there is an order about who has more seniority as next of kin. So the order is this: if your loved one was an adult, the current partner or husband or wife has the first right as the next of kin. So they're the ones that make the decisions about the funeral. Now, if there is no partner or spouse, then the next order of priority will be any adult child of the deceased person. Then if there's no adult child, then the third order will be a parent. And if there is no parent, then the fourth order is an adult brother or sister. Now, if the deceased person was a child, then the order of a next of kin will be first the parent. If there is no parent, then it will be a brother or sister who's over 18. And if there's no brother or sister, then it will be the person who was the guardian for the child immediately before death. Now, let's talk about your loved one's wishes. If your loved one told you during their lifetime how they want their funeral to happen, or if they created a will or other legal document that sets out what funeral arrangements they want, then we recommend you do the best you can to honor your loved one's wishes. But just bear in mind that sometimes it's not economically viable or possible to honor your loved one's wishes. So do the best you can to do it to honor their wishes. But if you can't, then generally speaking, there is no legal obligation to carry out funeral wishes. So do what's best according to your means and budget. The other important thing to talk about is that a lot of Australians now are deciding to go for a direct cremation. A direct cremation is basically a cremation without a funeral service. So how it works is that an organisation such as Estates Plus will go to the hospital or the nursing home, collect your loved one, carry out the cremation. The cremation happens in a coffin, and after the cremation happens, then the ashes are delivered back to the family. Then the family can organise their own memorial service to celebrate your loved one's life. And you can do a lot of different things. Some people decide to have a picnic. Some people decide to go to their loved one's favourite spot and bring the family and friends together and scatter the ashes and share stories. You can have a party. You can plant a tree. Or you can decide you may not want to do anything. But using a direct cremation service gives you the option of celebrating your loved one's life in the way that's best for you. And it's often so much cheaper than using a regular funeral director. Traditional funerals cost around $7,500, where our cremation service cost in New South Wales under $1,700. The other thing about planning a funeral is you can decide to use a funeral director. A funeral director is a professional service, and they will take care of all the steps in arranging a funeral. A good funeral director will make you comfortable with the process and keep you well informed at each stage. What you're really doing is you're asking the funeral director to make all the funeral arrangements for you, and they'll take care of all of that. The celebrant. The celebrant is the person that will be the MC for the funeral, if you wish. They will be the ones that make sure that the funeral runs smoothly. Now, you can choose to hire a professional celebrant, or you can have a family or friend do it. Another important part of planning a funeral is the photo gallery. Now, whether you plan your own funeral or your own memorial, or whether you use the services of a funeral director, a photo gallery is often a special part of the whole process. Choosing the photos can be a special moment as well. If you going through the photos of your loved one when they were a child, looking at past moments, important moments in their life, such as marriage, graduation, the birth of their children, their retirement, when they were traveling, that brings a lot of emotional feelings back. And selecting those photos with your family can often be a special bonding experience. So that is something that should not be done alone. Get your kids involved, get your family and friends involved to help them find photos that will bring back great memories that you can display at the funeral or the memorial service. Having music at your funeral or memorial can add a special touch. Picking songs that are meaningful to your loved one and meaningful to you and your family can really provide a special emotional moment. The eulogy. Now, whether you're having a traditional funeral or you're having a memorial, having the closest family speak and share stories and memories about your loved one adds such a special touch. A eulogy is just a story. It's just sharing your memories about your loved one. Think about meaningful moments that are important to you and important to your loved one, such as experiences from childhood, school, marriage, grandkids, travels, highlights. Just share those moments. Share the moments that you most remember about your loved one. Make it personal. And most of all, focus on the positives. A eulogy should not include negative statements, because doing so can increase someone's grief. It's best to leave the past in the past. It's also a good idea to bring a copy of eulogy with you. And when you're reading it or speaking your eulogy, have a close family member with you up there when you're sharing it. Because if you get stuck and if you get a bit overwhelmed with emotion, your family member can take over and continue reading the eulogy, and that might help in case you get stuck as well. A few other things about funerals are: don't feel pressured to buy expensive coffins. The funeral industry often has huge markups on coffins, so there can be a strong sales process involved when they're trying to sell coffins to you. So don't get stung by any expensive coffins. The coffin doesn't have to be super fancy. A modest coffin is just as good. With a funeral, it's important to personalize it. Think about your loved one's favorite things. Think about what made them them, what made them unique, and create the funeral around that. You don't have to follow a formula for having a funeral. There's no one way of doing it. Do it your way. On the day that you have your funeral or your service, it's a good idea to come early before friends and family arrive. That way you can have a moment to yourself. You can prepare. You can deal with all the emotions. You can visualize the day. And because people often tell me that the day of the funeral goes by really quickly. It's often a blur for people, and it's a difficult time. So arriving early will really help you prepare for that day. I hope this has helped you in planning your funeral. subscribe to our videos for more information about how to get helpful information when a loved one passed away.